Hey everybody, just a quick note before we get into the gist of it. My audio is a bit off for the first 10 minutes, unfortunately, but it gets
Sorry, we're
better
still
and
novices.
we found the way to fix it and my microphone is now plugged in, so that's a big bonus.
So keep listening, it gets better.
Welcome to The Double Up. I'm Shannon Hughes.
And I'm Rachael Tilley, and we're creating this podcast to serve as the voice of women's surfing.
Hey Rach, tell me how your day was.
Hey, it was a good day, busy at work all day. It is now the evening here in Australia, so just finishing the day off. Actually, exciting news. I got a call from Slimes, which is a surf shop in Newcastle and the main surf shop for Mark Richards, and where he does most of his boards out of and stuff. And I had put an order in for a board for my brother Michael when we were down in Newcastle for the WSL events. And I just got a call that it is ready today. So that was actually just really exciting. Called him, sent the photos. It looks really awesome. So I'm really excited to just get my hands on it and now considering ordering one for myself.
Oh, that's so exciting. A new board is always just the best thing. And you're such a nice sister to gift it away instead of keeping it.
I know. That's how I feel. Like it's not even my board and I'm just like over the moon about it.
Okay, hold on. Are you going to ride it before you gift it? Because you're in Australia and your brother's in California right now.
It is that pretty that it feels even wrong, to put wax on it, really. But the board was made to be surfed, and it feels like it would be a crime to make it not be Michael that puts the wax on it for the first time.
Very good, big sister move.
Oh, it's like pulling teeth for myself. But how was your day?
Mine has been very slow.
Quiet?
No, very quiet. I am in Tokyo for the Olympics, which is so exciting. I just got here I'm on day 3, and I'm in a soft quarantine space where I am only allowed to be in my hotel room or at my hotel or on site at the International Broadcast Center. And today I didn't really need to go in to do anything for work. And so I just worked from my hotel room. I did go for a run. I realized that we have an outside emergency staircase. So I did a stair run, which showed me how out of shape I am because I just really surf when I'm at home.
But you're also prepared for fires now too, so
I'm so prepared. I know exactly what to do in the event of an actual emergency. So that's great. And then other than that, I just was kind of diving into some notes about the Olympics and watching some kind of highlight clips and getting to know more surfer stories and getting into the admin side of things before surfing kicks off, potentially at the start of next week.
What type of preparation is going in for, you only have a few days left before going live and it's the Olympics, it's surfing. What are you doing right now to prepare for that?
Oh, that's such a good question. So there's been a lot of preparation going in for the last few weeks, 6 weeks or so since I got hired for it. One of those main things has been my wonderful husband, our producer, Aaron Hughes, has been working tirelessly to build a website for me that just has so much information on each of the athletes. So bios on all 40 surfers. That's been a huge one going in behind the scenes. But now that we're a few days out, I'm focusing more on actually just watching a lot. So I'm watching a lot of kind of YouTube clips, and Olympics is releasing some stories on the athletes. And so I'm just doing everything I can to get even from an audio perspective and a visual perspective, starting to see and hear the voices of the surfers and watch them surf. And then really diving into wave conversation, because the majority of my role for this event is going to be sharing what surfing is with a very global audience, which we talked about a little bit in our first podcast, but it's very different to to talking to our core surf community like we would if I'm working for the WSL or the ISA. And so we're really trying to simplify the conversation down to the point of what are waves? What is a surfboard? What does a surfboard consist of? A top and a deck and a nose and a tail, and kind of just starting to break
That's interesting.
Down.
Topics that we wouldn't even think to break down, or I wouldn't think to break down.
Exactly. It's so far out of our space as core surfers to think of those kind of things. So it's been kind of fun. And I've been having conversations with my co-commentators. So for this event, I'll be working alongside of Brad J., who's an excellent host in action sports. Barton Lynch is here. He's the other analyst. The two of us are working as analysts this week, and he's the 1988 world champion. He's one of my favorite analysts to listen to. And so it's been really cool to just sit down with him and start having some of these really detailed conversations about how we can share what surfing is to the world. We're even going to do like an aerial tutorial tomorrow. So we're going to get on a call with
I love that.
Guy Kais King from Australia, and he's going to just get on a Zoom call with us and just help us, again, get our brains into that space of when we're watching airs, because we're going to see so many good airs at the Olympics, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good guesstimate.
Just to like, yeah, it's definitely where surfing's heading. It's where it's been for progression, but like the conditions here are just so prime for that, like these beach break conditions. And so we're going to do like an aerial tutorial tomorrow, just of like, how do we best communicate what these guys are doing? Because sometimes we look at an air and it's like, wow, they're doing a lot of spins. Okay. So let's break it down in technical terms, as well as really simplifying it for the general population.
Yes. I feel like that's a really good way of putting it, because it's the same as if I watch gymnastics. Like, all I see is their body twisting like 8,000 times. And they're
Totally.
like, what? That was a double side 1.5 forward round spin. And I'm like, oh, okay. It just looked like 8,000. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's probably a really good. It's funny because it's probably second nature for you guys and just talking about things as you see. But that's really interesting. You're even retraining the way you speak about it to an audience that isn't used to seeing that stuff or isn't used to the technical terms around it. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think it'll be fun. And just to be able to share like why surfers love surfing. Like, it's such a sport that's not a sport. It's such a hobby and a lifestyle. And
yeah, that's
it's almost like a religion for us, right? And so to be able to share that feeling with the world, as opposed to it's just another sport where you show up to the track or you show up to the field or the pitch and things look the same all the time. And so to be able to share like what keeps drawing us back and the mystery of it, I'm really excited for.
Well, actually, side note, softball Olympics started today and Japan beat Australia. I didn't know that the Olympics actually started before the Olympics, but we had it on in the office today and we were watching softball. Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. There's so many days and so many sports and things involved. So it's exciting that something's getting started today. A lot of the coworkers like that are working for the same crew that I am this week started work today. And I was like, oh, I still have like 4 days to just prep, which is really nice.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
cool to see everybody starting to get it going. Well, Rach, let's get into our hot topics. One of our ideas that we've been talking about together has been to share, 3 to maybe 5 news stories of things that are happening within women's surfing every week. And so we thought we'd just jump straight into our hot topics for this week.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I'd like to almost preface by this, and preface for our whole podcast in general, is that it's really easy to get like the top main headlines in surf media. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Shannon, but what we're looking to really do is kind of highlight those other stories that maybe aren't being told globally, that are maybe just being told in smaller communities and stuff, and make those smaller stories more global as well. Like, give them a voice and just bring all those different conversations that are happening that maybe aren't making current headlines. So you might hear some stories or discussions around things that you haven't heard. And I think that's what I'm looking forward to, is making those conversations more prevalent, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, is
that a good way of putting it?
Good summary. Yeah, I love that. Because it is. I mean, some of the things that we'll talk about will be like, major headline news because they're so exciting, and whatever's dropping in that week will just be like really cool.
Exactly.
When we find out who wins a world title this year, that's going to be something.
Exactly.
It will be number 1 in our hot topics. But there's so many other things, and there's so much that's going on in the world of both shortboarding and longboarding, and so much conversation in the culture of surfing as well, and things that are happening, in the women's world of surfing, just in so many different things. And so, yeah, I think it's going to be fun to highlight some of that stuff that people might not be totally aware of, which would be cool. Do you want to start us off? Do you want to list off our first hot topic for the double up?
First hot topic for the double up. I'm going to give everyone, and I kind of gave a preface to this if you listened to our last episode, but our new edit alert that we have 2 really awesome women's surfing movies edits going around at the moment. First one, it's called Surfing. It features Steph, Tyler, Nikki, Macy, and Dimity. It is, fun fact, I was actually talking to Nikki about this when we were on the Australian tour, And if you look at the logo or their little lockup that they made that says surfing, and it's all in different colors, and that's actually because they filmed most of the surfing at Rainbow Bay on the Gold Coast, and so they made
Aw.
surfing in rainbow colors. I
That
thought that
just
was
gave
pretty
me
cool.
chills. That was cute.
It's
Great,
so
great
cute.
fact. I love that.
I know. So, anyways, gosh, Shannon, you've seen this, right? Tell me you've seen this.
Yeah, we just saw it because it's just finally gone global, right? I mean, I kept seeing posts about it while you guys were touring on the Australian tour for those 4 events, and they were doing all those premieres, which was really great to know, but I just wanted to see it. And so Aaron and I were able to watch it a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, it just like, it was one of those edits that was so cool because the surfing was so phenomenal. Like, and it was just really incredibly good, stylish women surfing a right hand point break for the most part. And right hand point breaks are my favorite kind of waves. Style is like the most important thing in surfing to me. And so to see these women just absolutely kill it on that level. And one of my favorite things about it was the soundtrack. I loved
that was what I just stole mine.
Yeah. Perfect. Like really good Australian music. It was really fun.
Well, what I loved too about it, the music matched each surfer. So Steph had some like a really nice, beautiful soundtrack. Tyler's song was "This Is Australia," like very, you know. Nikki's was a lot more like, I don't know.
It was like full hip hop or something, wasn't it? Like
hip hoppy and totally. It was so fun. Like I've never been a surfing edit watcher. Like growing up, my brother had every single movie of what was happening in men's surfing at the time, like Fly in the Champagne, Lightning Strikes McFanning. No interest. Never seen any of them. Have all the DVDs at home. Michael's seen them like 1,000 times. I just never had an interest. And this is what I'm interested. Like now I'm interested. And I think the missing piece was like just watching really phenomenal women surfing for me. But the fact that it had fun music and really brought an awesome female spin onto good surfing and a surfing edit, and they just owned it as themselves. They weren't trying to fit other molds.
Totally. And it was just like they had a filmer that just tracked them around their daily lives.
Exactly.
And they all live on the Gold Coast. They live close to each other. They're such good friends. Like it's such a tight pack. All of them with championship tour experience. All of them, you know, just surfing together. And they're the top surfers in the world. And it was like such a cool insight to just being like, all right, let's just get a cameraman to walk alongside of them and drop some great surfing. Like such good barrels, such good turns, like so much good stylish surfing. I think for me, actually, Dimity Stoyle was the standout within it.
I agree.
Like her surfing is ridiculously good. Like it's so sharp, it's so critical, but there's such an element of style that's like a Steph Gilmore, but it's even just a different, like it's just this next level style that
it's
I wish
really
we were
spunky,
still,
has a spunk to it.
Yeah, it's like really good and really reactive. And I wish we were still watching her on the championship tour. But just to be able to see her like drop in surfing of that level in an edit with like 4 women between Steph, Tyler, Nikki, and Macy, who are current championship tour competitors. And that Dimity was like the standout within that speaks so much to her surfing. And then also to just that little community culture that as friends they've built together of pushing women surfing to the next level while keeping it as like fun and alive and just Rainbow Bay as possible.
Well, it leads into a different conversation that is going to be too long to dive into right now. But the fact that, you know, potentially being on the CT does not then justify the best surfers in the world. Like there are surfers that are not great competitors, but are just dropping surfing like that stands the test of time with 7-time world champions and 3-time world champions and longtime CT surfers. That was really cool to see. I agree. She was definitely a standout in that. Just a very pleasant surprise.
Yeah. Well, an absolute recommendation from us for a watch.
Well, I am so sorry, but I've just realized, Rachel, that my microphone was not connected to my speaker was connected to the wrong speaker and I was recording through my computer instead of my microphone.
It's okay. I think it makes us human, shows we're still novices.
We are on episode 2.
As if we needed any more checks
Proof,
to ourselves proof to ourselves about that.
Exactly.
But anyways, you sound great.
Thank you. So
let's get back into it.
Great. Well, talk to me. Girls can't surf. Hot topic number 2.
So Girls Can't Surf, you and I both saw this when it premiered in Australia and it's now hitting the US. I think you can now just get it digitally here in Australia too if you missed it in theaters. But it is an awesome movie that captures the story of women's professional surfing through the late 80s, 90s, and then through the early 2000s, and then kind of and brings it to present day as well with equal prize money and stuff. But just a really interesting film. Learned so much about the history of surfing in that period and was just a really fun, I mean, it touched on some really serious topics as well, but overall was a really fun look back into the 80s and the style of surfing, like the style of clothing, and the women that were featured on that movie did a really good way of storytelling and reminiscing on that period during their lives.
Yeah, it was really incredible. It was so good. I saw it twice. I wanted to go see it a third time, but that was maybe excessive in theaters. And it was just like, again, finally a really wonderful women's surf film that showcased some great surfing, but also told history in a certain time period. Rach, we've been having this conversation, like surfing, women's surfing it began so much earlier than just the late 80s. And so where this picks up from is kind of like these women are picking up the baton that's been passed on to them from the generations before. But it was such a good insight to where the kind of the battle of being a professional surfer for a woman was kind of in the fire in the late 80s and through the 90s, and what they had to deal with, and I guess like the walls that were put up around them as competitors, the kind of waves that they had to surf, the expectations from them in so many different areas that were just so unnecessary for athletes. Like, why do they need to have these extra expectations on them? But they do.
Even just
and these women.
How is it when they even had to wear those jerseys as their bathing suits? Like, I just can't even believe that was a thing.
Oh, totally ridiculous. Like the event at Haleiwa on the North Shore is one of the heaviest waves ever, right? Like it can be fun on a small day. I've surfed there, but it can be really hectic.
I've surfed it on a longboard with Barton Lynch watching on the beach. All the shortboarders went out the back. I was like 12 years old and I was like, I can go catch those ones on the inside. I was like the only one on my longboard
little
out there.
charger. That's so good.
Gosh.
Like it's so big and heavy. Like the footage that they're capturing in Girls Can't Surf is like so gnarly. And the women are given one-piece bathing suits to wear as their jerseys, where the men just get to paddle out in their normal rash vest with whatever board shorts they want to. And like bathing suits are really difficult to find a fit that fits right. Like you can't just rock up and grab whatever one and like paddle out in heavy surf and not expect it to fall off of you.
First of all, we're not all one size fits all. Second of all, I love these were like low back, like up the bum type of one pieces. And Jody was like, there's a picture of her and she tells the story obviously better than I'm going to paraphrase it. But how she's doing a bottom turn and there's a photo of her correcting the strap on her bathing suit because it just kept falling off of her shoulder. And so here it's just proof, like mid competing, it just did not work. It didn't work.
It just not in the slightest. So ridiculous. But then like the cool thing about this film is that it just like followed the stories of these women winning world titles. When we saw Pauline Menzer win the world title and then not get any prize money, of course, there's been so much chatter around that now, and these amazing crowdfunder that went through and got Pauline the prize money that she deserved, like back when she won her world title, which is like That's so awesome. Cool to see it come full circle. But like so many stories like that these women had to deal with, or like Rachel, we've dealt with the same thing, paddling out in bad conditions and the guys get better conditions in contests. But like
even when I won my world title, I know the equal pay only just went the same in, I want to say 2019. It became the first year that it finally was. Sorry, Shannon, correct me if I'm wrong. But
nope, 2019, you're right.
Yeah, when I won my world title in 2015, wasn't the same then. And I just remember kind of going, this again, so much we can unpack here, but how I felt as like the person who was getting the less pay in that moment was going, well, how can I control how many women are competing in my field, or how many like heats I had to surf compared to the men? Because those are some of like the main, talking points to justify that. And
right, they just always keep getting beaten through our heads.
yeah, so a totally different, like so much more we could unpack there. But I guess what I'm just saying is like they went through that on tenfold of a stage of, not only equal pay, but just dealing with people flat out saying that they shouldn't be there, contests getting canceled, and all of that, saying this just shouldn't exist. It's a waste of money. Like, at least those are not the battles we're fighting anymore. So it's a really great retell and shows appreciation for that battle that has been fought to get to where we are now.
Yeah, that's such a good point to make. I mean, the stuff that they were fighting against is really, some of it we can relate to as women in surfing, right? But so much of it is like they fought those battles so that we don't have to fight those battles. And that's like, it's just such a cool storyline to follow. And it was one of those movies. I watched it, like, I went to see it a couple times in theaters because like I laughed, I cried, I had chills, I had absolute fury and anger like raging through me in parts of it, of just like, this is so unjust. This is not okay. Like, this is not what they should have had to fight against. And yet, like, they stood strong, like thinking of Pam Burridge, of Wendy Botha, of Lane Beachley, and then coming to those, later generations of the women that we looked up to, like Elisa Anderson.
Yeah,
the stuff that was expected of them, the way that they carried through to just continue pushing that women surfing mattered, that women deserved to be able to have a tour. The fact that the guys wanted to take the women's tour away, just get rid of it, because then they wouldn't have to deal with it and more money would be thrown to the men's tour. Like, those are ridiculous conversations that were had. And I don't know. I just like, is a really good film that really like inspired me in so many different ways.
Well, I got to meet Pauline Menzer a few weekends back. I surfed in this breast cancer awareness and fundraiser event, like this awesome little club round pretty much. And it was an all women's competition. And anyways, Pauline Menzer was also competing in it. We were in different divisions, but her and I, with a few other people, got to speak on a panel together before the event started. And that was like, I was pinching myself going, oh my gosh. Yeah, that was super cool. Super cool.
That's so exciting. Well, I think it's a conversation that we're going to come back to in this podcast, right? Like, I think we should do a full movie review of Girls Can't Surf at some stage, but we should try and get some of those voices, get a Pauline Menzer on here and get to hear more of their perspective on things that had gone down.
Yeah, exactly. For sure. I would love to hear more of their conversations on that. I know there were some of the surfers in the movie, some of the women in the movie at your premiere. I know Wendy Botha was at mine, and she just had some excellent stories on top of stories to tell in a Q&A after the movie finished. And so would definitely love to give those even more of a platform to like sit there, because it was just the stories that she was sharing with the audience was amazing.
Yeah, totally. Like, so the first premiere that I went to, Pam Burridge was there, and she is so sweet and so humble. She was there handing out rain coverings to people, like ponchos, because it was an outdoor theater at near the Sydney Opera House. And there was like rain in the forecast, and we all just went to see the film anyways. And it was just really cool because she was just there, like, getting it done, getting things done, and just supporting the crew that was watching. And then the other time that I saw it, I was able to host a panel. We weren't able to get any of the women in the film because they were all taken up at all of the other premieres. And so I had this amazing opportunity to host a panel with Tora Bright, who is an Olympic gold medalist snowboarder, and Jess Grimwood, who is a phenomenal QS competitor, formerly represented Australia multiple times, like on an international level. And it was just really cool to talk to them around like inspiring the next generations, like knowing that we've, hearing from both Tora and Jess on
successful female athletes in their own right.
Exactly. Yeah. And basically, the gist of what Tora shared with that crowd, and that crowd was specifically really young. There was a lot of young girls there, a lot of parents that had brought them along with Her Wave, which is a new campaign that's being run by Surfing New South Wales in Australia. That's an initiative to get more girls and more women
That's
in the
cool.
water. And so Tora was like very conscious of the crowd being young and wanting to share with these young girls to just go for it. Like whatever they felt that their dreams and their hopes were as surfers, as athletes, whatever it was, knowing that they were going to come against hardship because they are women in those industries and in those sports, like we've all come up against. She just had this like resounding message to just go for it and charge it and take it on no matter what. And I just thought it was so cool. And that's like really what the Women and Girls Can't Surf set the foreground for us to continue to do. Just go for it.
Well, what I love about these two movies out there at the moment is, I was saying to you before, my dad took me to a movie premiere when I was young. It was for a movie called Deer and Yonder, and it was also an all women's surfing film. And to my it's the last, I think, all women surfing film I've seen since these ones. And, we're talking like at least 15 years in between that. So this was really cool. But I just remember how excited I was to see that. And again, like I said before, I was not interested in any of the other surf edits. Loved that one. So I think we're finding a theme here. But it's just really good to see these on market now and just out for other people to watch and inspire that younger generation and inspire me. I sent you, like we both just said, the Girls Can't Surf one especially. Well, surfing with the girls, that one inspired me to just get out in the water. Girls Can't Surf inspired me to just like do something. And I sent you like a 10-minute voice message after I
That's right. It was like 1 a.m. when you sent it too.
Yeah. I was like, we need to like make a difference here. Like, let's pick up the baton. Let's keep it going. So yeah, anyways, if anyone's wanting to feel inspired and to get out in the water and then to just, do awesome things in life, like see those two films.
I love it. Well, kind of going along in that same conversation, our next hot topic is Lucy Small. Lucy is a good friend of us both. We've known Lucy from the longboard world for years now. I think I met her in J Bay in South Africa maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Randomly walked into my shaping bay one day, and Lucy, this funky Australian, was just in there talking to Des, and we ended up hitting it off, and then like years later reconnected. And yeah, we both, got stories of spending time with Lucy.
Yeah, well, I really got to know her when we were both like in this tiny room in your guys' apartment in JPay.
That's right. Yeah, back in 2017. So a few years after I first met her.
Lots of stories there. But yeah, she's making headlines at the moment, isn't she?
Yeah, I mean, she's just gone completely viral within Australia, and it started to reach a little bit beyond those borders, which is exciting. Rach, I just called you Lucy. Rach, do you want to share with us just a little bit about why she's making headlines right now? That big moment for her and Curl Curl?
Yeah, so there was an event that just happened recently. It was called the Curly Mal Jam. And that is at a spot in Curl Curl. It's down in Sydney. Anyways, it was just like a one-day longboard event. Nothing too serious, but there was prize money on the line. And Lucy ended up winning the event. And in her acceptance speech, I actually have a quote here. She said, this is a quote from her acceptance speech. "Thank you so much to the sponsors for the money they've put into this event. But I would say that this has been a bittersweet victory, knowing that our surfing is worth less than half of the men's prize money." So basically, she called it out in front of everyone. Like, no one can deny that she was not happy that the women's prize money was not equal to the men's prize money. And that has just similar to, we saw this happen to an event in South Africa a few years ago. And that really went viral too, where the women's prize money was half of the men's, and in a pro junior event. Do you remember that, Shannon?
I remember that because Zoe Stein, a young South African at the time, she's now been representing South Africa kind of on the main stage for a little while. She was pictured with half the prize money to the men's competitor, who was Rio Waida, an Indonesian competitor that's going to be competing here at the Olympics in just a few days.
Well, Lucy's story is definitely gained some similar traction in the fact of how viral it's gone, how many discussions it's brought to the table, and especially here in Australia, but even my family back home, they started sending me the headlines of going, isn't this your friend Lucy? Like, whoa, what's going on over in Australia? But yeah, she was all over the news for it, interview after interview. But you just recently listened to an interview that she did on a podcast.
Yeah. So there's this, I think, Lucy kind of went down this road of a week. I had a few conversations with her that week and she's like, I'm so tired. I don't even know if I can talk anymore. Or like, I haven't slept. I need more coffee. This is like, she's doing crazy interviews with platforms like Yahoo Sports Australia, like ABC News within Australia. And then she's just put out this podcast with a guy named Matt Barr, who runs a podcast called Looking Sideways, which is kind of a, surfing, snowboarding, skating, action sports podcast. And it was a phenomenal conversation. It was a long episode. I think it was well over an hour. But it was a really good back and forth between Matt and Lucy, diving into all sorts of issues around gender inequality within surfing. It really allowed, I think, Matt's really educated on a lot of kind of the background to that stuff that's already happening within surfing and within other sports as well. And so he really had a lot of the right questions to cue Lucy on. And Lucy, now that she's had so much time thinking about this over the last, month or two that everything's kind of been going wild, she just put some thoughts across that were so close to home, so well thought out. And it's positioned her actually in a spot now with the Green Party. We'll have to catch up with her soon just to know like exactly what's happening in her life. But I just thought that this podcast, Looking Sideways, the interview featuring Lucy Small, it was so good. It was such a fun conversation, as well as being really heavy and really clued in on some critical issues within gender inequality in surfing. And I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I think I'll definitely have to give that a listen, because I think, like I was saying before, it's definitely something I've experienced, but I just don't know if I can. I've been in a lot of conversations about it, but I don't know if I could articulate it in the way that would hit all the points that I want to hit. And Lucy has now articulated it in dozens of interviews. So I think that would be a really good listen.
Yeah, it's really good. And Lucy's got a great journalistic background as well. She does a lot of writing in the surf scene, and she's just finished her master's degree, and she's starting a PhD as well. Like, she is crazy cool. She is way smarter, I think, than either of us are. And it's going to do really incredible things in the world of surfing, and deeper into politics probably in the future. And so, she just is a really, like you said, really well articulated on a lot of thoughts that I think you and I really share. And probably a lot of our viewers or listenership would probably share as well.
It's not that fun of a thing to watch.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to watch the conversation. Just listen to it. Get in the car, have a nice drive, go for a walk, take a run. Whatever the world looks like where you are right now, get on and listen to it. It's really good.
So on to the next hot topic. The Surf Stadium wave pool, not too far out of Tokyo, has become a training ground for some of the Olympic athletes that are already in Tokyo. Oh, well, the Olympic surfing athletes, obviously. I don't think I actually need to clarify that. But anyways, it's become a training ground for some of these athletes with the likes of the US team and the Japanese team. Shannon, you're closer. I'm going to let you try and take to this one.
So it's really exciting you brought that one up. The Surf Stadium is a new wave pool. Like you said, it's outside of Tokyo. It's like 3 hours south in
You're going to have to practice your Japanese, Shannon.
In Makinahara in Japan. Yeah. It's going to be a long week of pronouncing Japanese names here in Tokyo. And they've got some great new wave technology. I'm blanking on the name of it. Aaron, what's the name of that wave technology?
Perfect swell.
Perfect swell. Thanks, honey.
The man with all the answers.
The man with the answers. So Perfect Swell is the wave technology that's being used at Surf Stadium. And there's a lot of great footage that's been dropping out. There's been some conversations on some other podcasts about it already, especially leading up to the Olympics. As like you said, we have some Olympic athletes that have been training there. Some free surfers as well, getting a few great waves in. It's got like some little ramp sections to it, same way that Waco does, and some great turning sections as well, like on kind of the opening section. Really good for super solid rail game, and then really good like end sections for airs. But I think it's been really cool. Like, there's been a lot of conversation around the men that have been surfing it, but there's 4 women that have been absolutely blowing it up. 2 of those who are surfing for Team Japan, they're here at home and they've been able to use it as a training ground for a little bit longer leading up to the Olympics, which is a kind of a cool thought to use a wave pool for that training ground for both Mahina Maeda and Amuro Suzuki, who are representing Team Japan for the Olympics, because it's really consistent. It means they can paddle out and get a ton of waves, and they're not reliant on sitting out in the ocean and waiting for swell to arrive in, small summer conditions that have kind of been what we've been seeing for the last few weeks here. And then we also have seen some great edits dropping in from Caroline Marks and Carissa Moore, because Team US has just arrived in Japan a few days ago. And from what I can gather on social media, my little, searches and watching everyone's videos and things.
Yeah.
I think Team US just went straight to the surf stadium from the airport. And
it's kind of looks like there hasn't
some
been
really good waves.
Much waves right now, like in Chiba, where the contest is going to be. So that's really good that they've been able to launch straight down there and start getting some waves. Just get the feet wet.
Yeah, exactly.
Nerves out.
Totally. Like, get rid of that jet lag, all the different things. And so I think for me, Carissa Moore has been the standout. She dropped some footage from it today.
I don't think
and
that's
it was
that surprising, right?
Not surprising. Current world number 1. She's the number 1 seed heading into the Olympics, which is a conversation that we'll get deeper into in just a few minutes.
I don't get that system at all. So you're going to have to explain that one to me.
Great practice for the upcoming week. Carissa just dropped like some seriously good airs, and it's making me really, really excited to see the women surf for the Olympics this week.
I think it's a really interesting concept, though, that because there was a lot of back and forth when surfing first was accepted into the Olympics on whether it was going to be in all this new wave technology type of wave pools, or if it was going to stay pure and stay in the ocean. So they ended up going with the option to keep it in the ocean. But in my experience of surfing in wave pools, while it's like a really cool anomaly, it feels so different to surfing in the ocean. So I think it's a really interesting tactic and decision for the teams to head down there and start practicing there. Like, I guess, some of the reasoning, like we said, to get the jet lag off if there's not really already many waves. But it's a really interesting new tactic of training that I guess we might start seeing more now that wave pools are starting to pop up all around the world. Yeah,
it's definitely, I'm like such a fan of surfing in the ocean, because I've actually only ever surfed in the ocean. I've never surfed in a wave pool before. So I don't know what that feels like. But I love that for surfing for the Olympics, it's going to be introduced in the ocean. It's going to show the world what surfing is all about. It's the
sport in the purest form.
Right. It is the purity of it, right?
Like, I kind of was thinking they were going to go wave pool because that's very Olympic of them. Like, makes it more of like a snowboard event on the half pipe, like it's the same type of thing. And that's I actually wrote a paper about this in university, but I'm trying to remember all the points that I said.
Great.
But that's the Olympic thought process of creating an equal stage, an equal playing field, and seeing who rises to the top. So if you look at, there's not many other Olympic sports that rely, except for sailing. However, sailing, while it also relies on Mother Nature and conditions, everyone gets the same wind. Like, it's the same wind coming at the same time. Where waves, like, it could be the same conditions of 2 to 3 foot, but as we know, each individual wave is so different, relies so much on luck of having priority at the right time. And so yeah, I'm glad they introduced it, like you just said. I think it's like pure to surfing, how I'd want the world's debut of surfing to be. But I actually was surprised on that decision.
Yeah, so that decision was actually made back in 2016. So 2016 at the Rio Olympics is when surfing was confirmed that it was going to be an Olympic sport, alongside of skateboarding, sport climbing, and then softball and baseball have been re-entered into the Olympics.
And there we go. I was watching it today.
Yeah, and there we go. They're back. It's
Japan
so cool.
Obliterated Australia. It was crazy.
Well, the reason it's back in, I think, is because like it's such a huge sport in Japan. Baseball and softball are massive sports here. There's a professional, I cannot think of her name right now. We'll drop it in somewhere. She is a pitcher for the United States, and she lives in Japan. She's lived here for the last 9 years, and like the competitiveness and the talent level of Japanese women in softball is so high that she would rather live and train here than do that within the US softball community, which is like a pretty cool like nod to Japan within that. And I think it's really great for them. Like it's a really cool kind of, this is weird, but like a soul sport for them. I think Japan really loves baseball and softball so much. So that's cool to see. Yeah, but surfing was like given the nod to get into the Olympics back in 2016. And from 2016, when it got in, it was underneath the regulation, the rules, whatever you want to call it, that it would be in the ocean, that it would be surfed in natural waves. So back in 2016, they made that decision. It has not changed since. It was never going to change. And we already know also that looking forward to the 2024 Olympic Games, which is Paris 2024.
Which is actually not that far away now.
I know, it's only 3 years away, which is crazy. So that's already been confirmed that surfing is in and that it's going to be at Chopu. Again, natural wave, like scariest wave in the world. But pretty cool, at least for the first 2 times that surfing's being showcased in the Olympics, it's going to be in natural waves in the ocean.
I guess it's a pretty clear indication that longboarding will not be introduced in 2024 to the Olympic Games.
I didn't even think about that.
I thought about that immediately when it was announced to Chopu. I was like, and
that's heartbreaking.
I feel like it's probably a very debated opinion because longboarding is, while it has competition, it's even like more of the anti-competition side of
totally
the surfing sport. But me, who loves competition and would love to just represent my country at the Olympics, I would just love selfishly the opportunity. And also, I think it would be a really cool thing. But maybe in LA in 2028, like Malibu, there could be a really good opportunity. So we will see.
Imagine that, like Malibu. Yeah. Imagine that, Malibu, or maybe even Trestles with like Sano as a longboarding option. Even Trestles as a longboarding option.
Even Trestles as a longboarding option. It's just the locals that have decided there that it's a shortboarding wave.
Right.
So I detest
But in real life.
In real life, it's just a great wave.
I mean, you're a local there. That's your home ground.
I am a local, but I will paddle out, see the people I've grown up with, and still sometimes get dirty looks. So I just stick to my lane most of the time.
Stick to it. Well, that's exciting. Also, the 2032 Olympics just confirmed for Brisbane, so we could see Rainbow Bay on
that would be awesome.
Cards, longboarding, shortboarding in the Olympics, Gold Coast.
I feel like that's probably a pretty safe guess. I mean, Rainbow Bay, Snapper, where traditionally the WSL shortboard tour would open up its season every year. It is the last break here in Queensland. It's an hour south of Brisbane. Brisbane doesn't actually get any waves as a place itself because there's an island right off of the actual coast of Brisbane. So it just blocks everything into the city there. So no doubt they'll be coming down to the Gold Coast, I would assume. And yeah, we could be seeing it here right in my hometown at the moment.
So good. There's a while to go, but just like there's this great hope for the future of surfing. It's already an amazing sport, but like where else could it go? You know?
Well, like, gosh,
really cool.
What if it was in Switzerland? Like if it was announced in Switzerland, 2032, what would
that
we
would
do?
Be hard. I don't know. Does Switzerland have any territories? You know, the way that France is utilizing Tahiti?
Interesting enough, when I did compete in the last ISA Longboard World Championships in 2019, there was a guy representing Switzerland. So I think he just practiced in Germany and France and stuff. But he was a representative for Switzerland. So, you know, maybe anything's
has
possible.
Like a really good surf community. And they do. They spend a lot of time in France. I think it's kind of the go-to.
That's so random.
So random. Maybe some river surfing. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Well, okay. On to the next point, Rach. Hot topic number 5.
I just love this. I think you need to read it out. It's just an awesome final little tidbit before we move on. But this is just blows my mind how we're still
mainstream media, right? Covering surfing. They've covered mainstream media covers surfing over the years. There's little things that get thrown in. Something exciting happens. Kelly Slater does something cool. Mainstream media covers it.
I keep saying the Olympics is introducing surfing to the world. It's not. Surfing has been a global sport for many years now. However, the Olympics is a vehicle to reach new viewers. But definitely we've been in the media long enough to not sound like some Hollywood.
Just have some basics down. Okay, so I'm just going to launch straight into it. There's this article that the Washington Post just released. It's on the new sports that are being featured in the Olympics, which is great, right? So cool that they're covering the new sports. They interviewed Caroline for surfing to cover her searching for the perfect wave.
As we always do every day.
As we always do. They were searching for a perfect wave on a 6-inch day at T Street. Very small surf conditions. So unfortunate. And this is it's a great article. You'll have to go read it. It just really hits the funny bone in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
By the Washington Post. Quote of the day. It's made my week. Actual highlight of my week. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
It's big enough for her to barrel, riding through a cascading tunnel of water, but also easy to navigate, allowing Marks to build speed and use the wave lip like a ramp, launching her and her board, I'm so trying to keep a straight face, into the air for twirling tricks. The mere idea of this mythical wave makes her smile. Washington Post on Caroline Marks in the Olympics.
Oh my gosh. And like the Washington Post is a respectable media agency. Why does surfing, and we all know with Hollywood movies too, like why is surfing always this like stereotypical, does not, like people just can't get it right unless you're from the surf industry. Like, yes, we do have certain vocabulary and stuff, but every sport does. Like every sport has that. So why, like, I wonder if other people shake their heads also like about this in other sports, you know, and maybe we're not picking it up because we are not as privy to, you know, their kind of lingo. But surely I feel like everyone can pick that up, that's just like the cheesiest thing you've ever heard.
So
I don't even
cheesy.
get what they were saying in that sentence. And is that big enough to barrel? Are they referring to that 6-inch day at T Street, or I'm like just a little bit,
or is it like what they were observing? Because there were 5 journalists, sports journalists, working together for this article.
5.
So this is what the five of them pulled together.
This
I'm sure they're phenomenal journalists and doing it. This
feels like a high school like English assessment where you just had to like throw in all these adjectives, where the English teacher was like, you got to put the hook at the beginning of the paragraph and get people and really describe it. And like they've just thrown in like twirling and twinkling and whatever other
cascading,
whatever any of that means, to say that like she's just looking for waves and is a good surfer and wants to do well at the Olympics. Like, thank you for the laugh. I think that's a really good way to end our Hot Topics segment on a high note. That was a really good laugh. We're going to put, for the more serious conversations we had, we're going to put a link in our show notes to some of those things, of like the surfing edits and the link to the podcast with Lucy. And until next week with next week's top news.
All right, well, on to our next topic, or the main discussion really for today, is we're going to talk about how these surfers qualified to get into the Olympics and who the 20 women are that we're going to be seeing surf here in Tokyo, Rachel.
Yeah, I know there were a few different events that qualified the surfers to make it to Tokyo, so it's kind of been a confusing process to watch. I know it's kind of come from 2019 and then another event recently, so you're the one who's been on the ground through all of it. Do you want to talk us through what that was?
Yeah, it's definitely been a long process to actually getting surfers to the Olympics, and it's combined, you know, results from the WSL and from the ISA. So I thought to give our listeners a very straightforward look at what's happening, our key elements for qualification. So first off, there are 20 men and 20 women competing in the Olympics. There's a maximum of 2 surfers per gender per National Olympic Committee, which means there could only be 2 men from a country, but there could also be 2 women from that country. So you could end up having 4 representatives per country, which is great because we do see that. Right. We see that some teams have, you know, those multiple representatives and are traveling here as like an Olympic team as instead of just individuals. But having said that, the qualification spots are earned on an actual individual basis by name. So it wasn't that certain countries were given 2 surfers for them and they got to pick or qualify surfers to those spots. It's entirely on an individual basis and based off of individual results, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So
yeah, that makes sense.
In accordance with the IOC guidelines, the IOC is the International Olympic Committee. the qualification events have been determined in an order of hierarchy. So there's a number one way to qualify, and if that's the way you qualified, you can't be out qualified through the number one way. Which means that if two surfers of a gender, so if two women have qualified through the first hierarchy order, right, number one, that National Olympic Committee, so if two American surfers qualified in that top spot, America, that National Olympic Committee, will not be able to qualify any more surfers through that gender through lower ranked qualifying events. So the number two way to qualify, the number three way to qualify, even if American surfers or more American women qualified in those spots, they wouldn't be getting a ticket to the Olympics because there's already two women that have qualified through the first way, which is actually what we've seen. And we'll get into that in a minute when we talk about who has qualified. All of the surfers were selected by any surfers that were selected by their respective national federations. So their national surfing federations like USA Surfing or something along those lines, Surfing Australia.
Yeah.
For their national teams, they had to participate in the 2019 and or the 2021 ISA World Surfing Games in order to be eligible for Olympic qualification. So they may have gained their qualification through World Surf League rankings, but they also had to get basically participation points at the ISA World Surfing Games to keep that qualification. It didn't matter what their results were there, but it was in an effort to encourage participation from the world's best to support their national federations, which happens on a number of sports where there are a lot of different sports that require their professional athletes that are going to compete at the Olympics to participate in national events or in their national team to keep those spots, which is cool. It's just, it's really encouraging the growth of those sports and the best athletes to pour back into their national, the way that their national federation of their sport, which, so that's.
Yeah, I think there's been so much like conversation back and forth. I think you put that in a good way in the fact that everyone's kind of going, well, why are they surfing WSL events and ISA events? And well, one, it makes sense that ISA was the leading organization to get surfing into the Olympics. But secondly, to go back and support their national surfing federations in the fact of pouring back into the sport. And like you just said, which I wasn't aware of, that other sports have maybe somewhat similar qualification processes as well.
Yeah, I mean, because surfing's brand new to the Olympics, there was this big conversation since it was decided back in 2016 at the Rio Olympics that surfing would get into the Olympics. This conversation on, okay, now what does that process look like? And so the ISA and, working alongside of the IOC, they worked together to look at how other sporting federations got their, how do other sports work within this conversation? And that helped to shape surfing. And I'm sure it's the same for skateboarding and a couple of other new sports like sport climbing on, how do they work out a qualification process? So in the end, like it ended up, it's complicated, but it's fairly straightforward at the same time. And I kind of love the fact that we're taking the combination of the best from the World Surf League, as well as the best that have ranked through the ISA World Surfing Games, because we get a lot of names that are, like you mentioned, Rachel, new to that space, maybe new to us, that we haven't seen them surf as much because they're not in that top 10 or that top, maybe even top 30 conversation every year. But they're phenomenal athletes and they've been representing their country so well. And so they're also given this opportunity to be able to compete and to represent at the Olympics.
We're also seeing names pop back up like Bianca Baitendog, Paulina Du, who used to be on the championship tour and have not been in that top conversation for a while, but clearly are still surfing well enough to put themselves back in this space. So it'll be really interesting and great to see those names pop back up and see how they compare right now against some of the top surfers.
Yeah, I'm so excited to watch the surfing. I can't wait. It starts in like 2 days here. It's Friday. Opening ceremonies tonight. Surfing looks like we're going to have the green light for the opening day of the waiting period on Sunday, and we're going to get to watch these women rip. So, all right, Rachel, I'm going to go through the order of hierarchy for how to actually qualify. So we talked about why these different things are the way that they are, but there were 5 ways to qualify for the Olympics. The number one way, the highest way to qualify, was the results from the 2019 World Surf League Championship Tour, the WSLCT. from those rankings at the end of Pipeline, the end of Maui for the men and women, we saw the first 10 eligible men and the first 8 eligible women. So keeping in mind that they had to be eligible and that there can only be 2 representatives per gender per nation, we saw out of the United States on the women's side of the draw, we saw 3 Americans come through in those top spots of the top 8 women. It meant that only the number 1 and the number 2 woman would get a spot into the Olympics. That third woman is out of potential qualification, sitting there as an alternate on the alternates list, but unable to qualify because those 2 slots for gender for a National Olympic Committee were taken. So that's where it won't necessarily be the top 10 and the top 8, but ineligible conversation.
Well, that's where we saw Carissa, Caroline, and Lakey really battling it out for those 2 spots, because they all finished right up there in 2019. So that was a really exciting race to watch, the race to the Olympics. But that makes sense in the fact that they were sitting all in the top 8, but only 2 spots for USA could go.
Totally. So that was it. Number 1 way, 2019 World Surf League Championship Tour. Second way to qualify in the list of hierarchy, 2021 ISA World Surfing Games, which is the event that just took place in El Salvador about 6 weeks ago. So from that event, we saw the first eligible 4 men and the first eligible 6 women. Based off of double qualifiers, which we'll get into, we did see that number kind of go up on both sides of the thing. But the second way to qualify, 2021 ISA World Surfing Games. Third way to qualify was results going back to the 2019 ISA World Surfing Games, where we saw 4 men and 4 women selected based off of continental results. So we saw the top finishing eligible surfer per gender, 1 from Africa, 1 from Asia, 1 from Europe, and 1 from Oceania that got qualification spots.
Right.
Going into the fourth way to qualify was the results from the 2019 Pan American Games, the first eligible man and the first eligible woman from that surf contest. Now, that's important because results from the 2019 ISA World Surfing Games that talked about those continental qualifications, the Americas were not in that continental qualification conversation because the Pan American Games are already something that's used to qualify people towards Olympic conversation.
Right. That's not a new surfing thing.
That exists and that functions underneath National Olympic Committees already. And so that was decided that that would be one of the ways to qualify surfers to the Olympics. Now, if Africa or Asia or Europe or Oceania had their own kind of games system like that, that's how their qualifications would be done as well. But the Americas are the only continents that have a games system like that that's moving towards Olympic qualification. And then the last way to qualify was through the host nations being given a slot for a man and a woman. That was a guaranteed spot for Japan this year to have a woman and a man in the Olympics. But the exciting thing is that we saw on both sides of the draw, we saw 2 surfers qualify through higher ways to qualify into the Olympics. So on the women's side, we saw Amuro Suzuki and Mahina Maeda both qualify through the 2021 ISA World Surfing Games, which meant that the host nation slot wasn't required because they already got surfers in via the normal qualification spots, which is really cool.
Yeah, so that's awesome because that's just really saying something about the level of surfing where Japanese women are at the moment. And I mean, surfing is actually a really big sport in Japan, but just seeing it grow farther onto the world stage is exciting. And that's just, their results are a testament to that.
Exactly. So exciting. Well, should we talk about who actually qualified for the Olympics?
Yeah, let's dive into it.
All right, so we're going to look at it based on those ways to qualify. So number 1 way was the results from the 2019 World Surf League Championship Tour. Who were those women, Rachel?
Okay, so we had Sally Fitzgibbons and Stephanie Gilmore both representing Australia. You have Joanne Defay representing France, Tatiana Weston Webb for Brazil, along with Silvana Lima, Carissa Moore and Caroline Marks for America, and then Brisa Hennessy for Costa Rica. So those were the top 8 that finished back in 2019, one thing that I like seeing is the Silvana Lima is in that conversation. While she hasn't been on the tour in 2021, she obviously got that qualification from 2019. So it'll be interesting to see how she comes back into the conversation after a year and a half of not as much competition, or it'll just be interesting to see what she's been doing with that training time.
Yeah, I love that she's in that mix as well. Having gotten the spot as the second Brazilian, Tatiana Weston Webb had outranked her in that, but she was still eligible because of some of those triple qualifiers, where we saw like a Lakey Peterson fall out as a third ranked surfer from the US. Great to see that Brisa Hennessy is in that mix. I mean, the Australians as well. Like, we've got a 7-time world champion in Steph Gilmore. We've got Sally Fitzgibbons fresh off of the win at Rottnest Island, as well as the win at her third gold medal for an ISA World Surfing Games just in El Salvador a few weeks back. And so there's really like this run of energy that's coming out of Sally. But then you've got a surfer like Joanne DeFay, who just took out the win at the Surf Ranch, which was after representing, France for her in El Salvador. And so I feel like, man, it's going to be a tough run for everybody. Like, they've all been surfing so well, and it's going to be really exciting to see these top names in women's surfing competing for a gold medal.
And on to that, Shannon, we also have Carissa Moore in that mix, which she's been the front runner pretty much for this entire 2021 tour, winning events or right up there in the pointy end of the event. So that'll be really interesting on how everyone has used the past energy that they have from their results. Like, like you just said, Sally off a couple wins, Joanne off a win, Chris off a couple wins. It's going to be interesting. It's like a clash of the mighty. I don't know. I think I just made up that. I like
saying, that though, because they are all so mighty. Like, that's actually kind of incredible.
It's clash like of the mighty.
They just all, I mean, it's kind of cool. Like, yeah, Carissa's that front runner. Like, she's got so many points on the championship tour right now, heading into the top 5 conversation, which we'll get into, in a couple of weeks here. But yeah, she's going to be tough to beat. But then you have Caroline Marks, who is the Grom coming in. She's, already been in world title conversation, which is
she's
insane.
Off a win at Narrabeen as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, has everyone won an event this year?
This is a top field here.
So Brees is maybe the only one without an event.
Tatiana won Margaret.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. There we go.
And Steph was in the finals for that. Yeah, that's going to be a really interesting list of surfers to watch compete against these other surfers that we're about to dive into, who we aren't used to seeing their names, but could also just really shake things up because we're not expecting it.
All right, so Rach, on to the next way to qualify. The number 2 way went to the 2021 results from the ISA World Surfing Games. There were 7 women that got qualification out of that event.
Right, so the names that we're going to see coming out of this area, or this event, I should say, is Pauline Adu from France, Yolanda Hopkins from Portugal, Teresa Bonvilla? Shannon?
Yeah.
Bonvilla, sorry. Teresa Bonvilla from Portugal, Mahina Maeda from Japan, Amuro Suzuki from Japan, Daniela Rosas from Peru, and then Leilani McGonigal, also from Costa Rica, pairing up with Brisa Hennessy from that 2019 CT qualification.
Yeah, so that's exciting because, like you mentioned before, Paulina Do, she's got championship tour experience, right? So she's someone that's going to be drawing on a very strong history of surfing moving into the Olympics, where the rest of our competitors, aside from Amuro Suzuki from Japan, who's just gotten those spots into the championship tour
Australian
this last
events.
year. Yeah. So she got some of those. What was her replacement exactly, Rachel?
Yeah, she got Lakey Peterson's injury replacement for Narrabeen, Margaret River, and Rottnest events here in Australia.
Right. So she's had now that taste. And she had like a quarterfinal or a semifinal finish at one of the events there. So she's done really...
Yeah, I think it was a quarterfinal.
She's done really well this year, matching up against, those women, those top 8 women that we just talked about who qualified through the CT. But then there's these names, these women that made it into the finals for the ISA World Surfing Games. Yolanda Hopkins, who is from Portugal, and Teresa Bonvilla, both of them finaled. Yolanda had like one of the best waves of the entire event. She dropped a 9.6 on a 2-turn combo on this massive, like heavy outside section that just shut down, but she managed like 2 super powerful turns before it shut down while being in the water against Steph Gilmore. And I don't even know if...
And that says something, because you would be so nervous just being in a heat against Steph. Like, just doubting yourself and, wanting to surf well just for the sake of putting on a good performance. And did we have a conversation before that it was also her birthday on this day?
I think her birthday was like the day before.
Storm.
It was a perfect storm, completely.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, she just, it was so cool to watch her. She's in her early 20s now. I think that's, a lot of the field here, we're looking at like 20-year-olds. Some of them kind of in that earlier range. Paulina Doe is a little bit older. And then Leilani McGonigal from Costa Rica. She's been like a real fierce force on the qualifying series for a long time. So she's a name that a lot of people might be more familiar with if they follow the QS, as well as Mahina Maeda, who's been like just out of qualification conversation over the years as well, representing Japan, but living in Hawaii, kind of born and raised there. So that's some really good names. And then a really interesting one is Daniela Rosas from Peru, who came 4th in El Salvador. She walked away with the copper medal. And in getting that, she actually double qualified herself because she already had a qualification spot from Lima, from the Pan American Games in 2019.
Right. Because she's from Peru. The Pan Americas.
So, yes. So she was qualifying through the Pan American Games, and she was one of those, she got to surf kind of at one of her home breaks in Peru as well, which is really cool. Phenomenal surfer, 19 years old, just a few months younger than Caroline Marks, who's also 19. Daniela Rosas, in getting qualifying through the higher ranked way to qualify through the 2021 ISA World Surfing Games, she then gifted her mentor, one of her surf coaches, and one of the all-time greats in women's surfing, Sofia Milanovic, fellow Peruvian, a spot into qualification, which is really cool. So there was a few things that moved around in the qualification conversation, but when Daniela Rosas double qualified, we saw Dominic Barona take the spot from her second place result at the 2019 Pan American Games. And that opened up this door for Sofia Milanovic to also get a qualifying spot into the Olympics. And Sofia, as far as kind of cool facts, Sofia is the oldest competitor in the draw, men's and women's side. And Daniela Rosas is the youngest competitor, men and women's side. And Sofia has been one of Daniela's coaches, one of her mentors for years through a program that Sofia runs. And it's just so cool to see, like, that's the history that's coming out of Peruvian surfing, and to see.
Yeah, that's a great story.
So I think that's, it's going to be amazing to watch. I'm just so excited to watch all of the women surf. All right.
Well, going further down, let's keep going down the list.
So next way to qualify, the number 3 way was the 2019 ISA World Surfing Games, which ran here in Japan in September of 2019. We had 4 surfers qualify through that avenue.
Yeah, so going off the back of conversation of Sofia Milanovic, coming from Peru, like we just said, you have Anat Lelor? Shannon?
Anat Lelior.
Thank you. From Israel, Bianca Batendog from South Africa, and Ella Williams from New Zealand. I think it's really good I'm not in your commentator role, Shannon, because obviously I'm like struggling on commentating 101 saying surfers' names.
It's okay. It's definitely a challenge. We do our best, but it's definitely not always correct. It's nice when we get familiar with names, though.
Hey, I'm just giving you practice here for the upcoming commentating the Olympics.
All right, so taking a look at that list, we've just talked a ton about Sofia. So excited to see her back in, former world champion, and she took out the win at the 2019 ISA World Surfing Games, so well-deserved spot for her to get into the Olympics. Anat Lelior from Israel, she is like, man, she took out the spot for the European qualification, so she was the top-ranked European. And having grown up in Israel, she spent so much time surfing all over Europe, and she kind of had to get out of Israel to be able to actually surf against women. She'd only grown up surfing against men, even in competition, which may be one of those reasons that's kind of pushed her surfing to develop a little bit younger, maybe a little bit quicker, and then to make her a really fierce competitor against that European contingency on the women's side. And then Bianca Batendog, I mean, former number 4, great friend of mine, former number 4 in the world from, I believe, her second or third year on the championship tour. Just the most graceful person I've ever met. I mean, I listen to her speak and I'm like, can you just write books and can you be a motivational speaker? And like every time she speaks, I tear up.
Tall.
She's
Like,
so tall.
Completely not opposite to everything you just said, but on a very different mind track. She's just so tall. I remember like being in the same room with her going, oh my gosh, how do you do what you do on a shortboard on that tiny thing when you're so tall?
Totally. I mean, she is such an impressively powerful attack. And if there is some size, which we're expecting a typhoon to hit here in just a couple days, then she's going to be one who could easily walk away with a medal here at the Olympics. And then Ella Williams from New Zealand, she got that spot ranking in the top 30 for Oceania through the continental qualifications. She is like sunshine. There's no better word to describe Ella Williams than sunshine.
So nice.
And yeah, it's just so cool that she's gotten a spot into the Olympics. She's been training. She's been one of those surfers that's known for a long time that she was likely going those provincial qualifications for 3 years now. And so she's been putting in a lot of work with Team New Zealand, and that's really exciting. And then the last way to qualify, we already spoke about her, but Dominic Barona got the spot through the 2019 Pan American Games, which happened in Lima. And she is a competitor that's also been around on the qualifying series for a long time. She is like a master aerialist. She can punt and do insane frontside airs. I'm so excited to watch her and to watch some of the progression that she might bring into surfing.
Yeah, that'll be really exciting. Coming from Ecuador, she will be the only person representing the Ecuadorian team. Is that right? Ecuadorian team?
The Ecuadorian team. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So she'll be the... But yeah, it's great to see surfers from regions like those that we don't normally see on the CT or coming from countries. Love that she's coming from Ecuador.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, I think that's one of the great things about this whole qualification process that we've just spoken through is that there is a very, like, heading into Olympics, right? We're talking equal opportunity all the way, fairness to the max, sports spirit, right. Like everything that could count on that side of things for Olympic conversation. They've included that in the qualification process, which is why we have such a diverse field of who's competing in the Olympics, while at the same time ensuring that each of these surfers had to fight to deserve their way there. There were no handouts, right? These surfers had to get the results at extremely difficult events, surfing against the world's best year after year. And so for them to rise to the top, to actually get those qualification spots and to walk away as, you know, Olympic athletes is an incredible result to them already, while also just giving this great field and this great representation for where surfing is at, I think, around the globe, and not just focused on those really power surfing nations that we're so used to seeing dominate the competitive field.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's right in the Olympic spirit, like you just said. It's all about fairness, and I actually wrote a paper about this in university, touching on them, whether they were going to surf in the wave pool or in the ocean, but then this whole qualification process, because that's completely new to surfing, in trying to combine all these different ways of WSL, ISA to get the world's best, but also fairly represented around the world. So I think it's a great round of names that we're going to see some really good heats go down.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. And the great news is, well, okay, so for anybody that's been paying any attention to Olympic athletes and you've seen some clips drop, some footage, some Instagram stuff, the surf has been really small this week, Rachel. We're talking like ankle slappers, you know, maybe knee high, maybe waist high, but we have seen like, you know, some of these surfers really destroying a good maybe 1 foot wave, which has been impressive. But there is a typhoon on the wave. So tropical cyclone surf is likely to be hitting for the opening of the Olympic event, which is so exciting. Surfline's been doing a great job covering that. So for those listening in, like, I'm sure anyone in the surf world's probably seen that stuff coming out. But there is some good stuff coming up in the forecast. And we should see some good overhead surf for at least 2 days of competition, which is really exciting. It might be a little bit stormy, but that's pretty common to come with typhoons, right? Like, we would rather see big, kind of messy surf than really small, few waves coming through, clean little lineup. Maybe for us as longboarders, that's what we would want. But for a shortboard for the Olympics, we could see some barrels on offer. We could see some really good sections, to hit or to punt off of. And it's going to be really exciting, hopefully starting on Sunday.
Yeah. So to round out this conversation, let's just go through a bit on what the heat draw and, what we're going to see in the next couple of days as far as competition.
All right. So heat draws. Our round 1, because we've got 20 surfers, right, in the draw, it's a little bit of an awkward number to run a surf event with, which is has been a conversation around it for a while. But that number was determined by the International Olympic Committee, the IOC. And so they're just, everyone else had to just run with that. There wasn't really
they probably set this number, and everyone in surfing is going, "Oh, we've never set a 20-person heat draw before," and they're going, "Sorry, you have to run with it," only to later find out, "Ooh, this is actually kind of a complicated process to set a heat draw that makes sense for 20 people." It's
exactly.
They definitely set themselves up for some hard thinking, some hard work in the whole draw process.
Totally. And I think it's kind of cool. It's a learning curve, There's so many other sports they've been dealing with. Surfing's so unique. It's completely different from any Olympic sport that's ever run through. I mean, we're literally throwing surfers out into the ocean and hoping that they can find something to surf where everyone else has an equal playing field for the most part. And it's just a totally different kind of setup to what would normally happen. The crew from the ISA working together with the IOC has worked out the best possible way that they can for these heat draws. So looking at round 1, Rach, we've got 5 heats of 4 surfers each. So 4 women in the lineup, 5 of those. Top 2 surfers are going to advance straight through into round 3. Bottom 2 surfers are going to fall into an elimination round for round 2. There's going to be a reseed after that first round to see who's surfing against who in round 2. So those bottom surfers will be reseeded, as well as those top surfers. They're going to jump into a reseed for round 3 based off of their individual results throughout that first round. For round 2, we're going to see 2 heats of 5 surfers.
That's the oddest of them
That's
all.
the oddest.
Yeah. We're not used to seeing 5-person heats. Like back when I was competing young in amateur events, it's very common to have 6-person heats, top 3 advance, and you'd sometimes surf a 5-person heat if a person didn't show up, but never in professional surfing or top surfing have we ever seen really a heat more than 3 people. So then to have a heat of 5 people, it's just the issue around it and why you don't see it in events like on the CT is that it's a lot of people in the water, and then leaves more things up to chance of getting waves or, the amount of waves. It's not as much about just back and forth surfing priority, that type of thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's actually really good insight. I'm going to use that in my commentary this week. Thank you. Thank you, fellow competitor and world champion Rachel Tilley. It does. It convolutes everything, right? Because, thankfully, so this will all run on day 1, most likely. We'll see round 1 and round 2 run back to back. Of course, they could call it off after round 1 if the conditions are really bad or something. But it looks like the swell is actually going to peak late on the Sunday. So I would think we'll start Sunday morning. We'll end up surfing all the way through round 2 and have a full day of surfing.
Yep.
And that's a good sign, knowing that with 5 people in the water, in order for it to really be a good show and for these surfers to have
waves.
You need ample waves. You're really going to need some waves. So that's thankfully right now in the forecast, that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
So coming out of that round 2, we're going to see that's the first round of elimination. So bottom 2 surfers in each of those heats are going to be out. We're going to lose our first 4 surfers from Olympic competition. Then there's going to be a reseed.
Sorry to cut in, but
go ahead.
The non-elimination round is quite common in surfing. You see it on both the CT and ISA events. I wonder, and so they've carried that into here. I just wonder if other sports have rounds like that.
That's such a good kind of question, and I'm not sure how all sports run, but I know for softball there is a non-elimination round, so they play through after their first game regardless, which is really cool. Last night I was downstairs in the hotel just catching up with some of the other commentators and working with for the Olympic broadcast station, the OBS that I've been employed by this week. they've got 70 commentators working among all of the sports.
Yeah.
I am myself and Barton Lynch, who are the surf analysts. I believe we are the only 2 commentators of those 70 that are only doing the sport that we are familiar with. Which
Really?
we feel, everyone else is commentating on like, they've got at least 2, some of them up to like 5 sports that they're responsible for.
Oh my
Some of
goodness.
this crew, I'm so impressed with them. Like from a journalist perspective, I am like, my mind is blown by what this crew is capable of. Like seeing the research they've been doing, seeing the conversations they've been having. Some of them are going to be commentating on sports that they're not that familiar with or they don't have a history with. And I mean, I'm talking like someone that's going to commentate on rugby is also commentating on like badminton. How different those sports could be. And it's crazy. But I was talking to one of the women that's commentating for tennis yesterday, and she was asking, she's like, how does surfing work? How does this, what is it like to paddle out into a heat? And, is it just based on like how many waves you catch? Like whoever catches the most waves win. And I was just started to explain
Thank
it
goodness
to her.
we do not have just like, we're not one of the 5 of other commentators. That would just not be good.
Exactly. I feel very privileged that we've been given the opportunity to actually like to be able to share surfing from, a very educated perspective this week.
Well, that then makes me think, I wonder if people like who know badminton sit and watch and go, oh my gosh, this commentary is
I've been thinking about
really
that all
tough.
week. Yeah.
Why
So
did
funny.
they say that?
Yeah.
All right, let's get back on track.
So anyways, she basically, all that to say, the tennis commentator was shocked, and she said it sounded like surfing sounded like the most stressful sport she'd ever heard described to her. When I was just describing paddling out and your best 2 waves count, and then, you obviously don't know what's going to happen because you don't know what waves are going to come through. Oh, and you have surfers, and you might have 5 surfers in your heat, and there's priority. And she was just like, I could see her eyes like starting to twig out. It was amazing. So
That's
for us,
awesome.
this seems really normal. But now that I'm starting to think about it in that context of, okay, it's a little bit crazy compared to some other sports.
Well, thank goodness we have you over there, Shannon.
So fun. So anyways, after round 2, we're going to lose 2 surfers. Top 3 are going to go into a reseed for the round 3, along with those winners from round 1. And then once we get into round 3, this is where it gets a lot easier. We're going down to woman on woman heat. So 2 surfers in the water. There's going to be 8 heats for round 3. The top 16 surfers paired up. Top goes through, bottom gets eliminated. And that's going to filter
so
straight
back to
into
normal. Back to normal.
Back
what
to
we're
normal.
used to seeing. Man on man.
Exactly.
Heat, or woman on woman heat. Sorry.
Totally. And I'm not sure the time frames for that, but it's likely that they'll run 30-minute heats for those that round 1 and round 2, and then down to maybe 25 minutes because we only have 2 surfers in the water. 25 minutes is still plenty of time.
Mm-hmm.
Given the conditions of the day, that can change, and that'll go down to the technical directors or the contest directors on site, which is the way that it always works in every contest.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
And then from there, we've got the quarterfinals, obviously, just woman on woman, and top advanced through into the semifinals. And then this is what's kind of fun in the conversation is that from the semifinals, you get surfers that will advance into the bronze match. So the bottom 2 surfers out of the semifinals will match up in the bronze match. And then the top 2 surfers from the semifinals will match up for the gold match.
Wow.
And then that's how we get
exciting.
our 4 medalists. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be really exciting because, normally if you lose out in the semis, you go, okay, well, I have an equal 3rd place. Well, here there's an opportunity to divvy it out even more specifically. And whoever's in that bronze medal match will really be fighting it out to get on the podium, to leave with that medal type of mentality. So it's just as good of a match as the gold medal match, which will be
totally
really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, they get to walk away with Olympic medals. It's so exciting. I think it's such a great thing for our sport. It's going to cause a lot of growth and a lot of it's going to be good to see where the sport can go from here. Based on all of this,
Wow.
Rach, there's so much information we just shared. I just felt like I'd tell our listeners, if you want to have a look at this, if you want to look at it with your own eyes and start reading through some stuff, just go to isasurf.org. They have covered everything. On their homepage, you go to their homepage, you're going to click through. The first thing is going to just say Tokyo 2020, and it's going to have all of the information. You're going to see the heat draws, so you can actually see right now. We're not going to go through it, but they've already got those seedings. You've got your round 1 seedings. You've already got round 1 matchups. So you can see
that's always where my
who's
heart
surfing
stops.
against who. Yeah.
But like, when the heat draws finally get dropped and everyone starts texting into the athlete group chat being like, oh, the heat draws are out. And you're like, oh my gosh. It's like test results. You're like, who am I up against? Always makes my heart beat really fast.
Totally. So that's all available on isasurf.org, as well as, this whole qualification process is laid out there too. And then there's also a full link, a page on where to watch Olympic surfing. So it gets a little bit confusing depending on where you're coming from, but they've done their best to lay it out. So through the US, the entire stream, the entire competition is going to be available to stream on NBC, probably on NBC Sport or whatever app you're able to get that way. Australia, it's going to be through 7plus, which is, another kind of app and streaming service as well that you can get. And then on the isasurf.org website on where to watch, they have literally a document that you can click and open. And it has a list of every single country of how you're going to be able to click through and watch surfing in your nation. So they've done their best to lay it out. And yeah, it's really exciting. I think we're in for some good stuff this week.
We can try and drop all these links into our show notes as well, along with some of the other things that we talked about previously in the episode in our Hot Topics segment.
Yeah, I love that. I love that we can, this is us new to podcasting, we can tell people, show people exactly where to go and they can just click through. So we'll definitely make sure that Erin puts all that in there.
Thanks, Erin.
Thanks, Erin. You're the best. We could not be doing this without him.
Definitely not. So, Shannon, that was a lot of content that we've covered today. First official episode done and dusted, and I'm feeling really good. Really excited to just be on this path with you and excited to be on this journey of this podcast with you in Tokyo at the moment. So that's just really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm so excited too. This is a really fun conversation, and I'm looking forward to having more chats like this. And, once we get past the Olympics, we'll start talking more about, what's happening with the World Surf League and just other little things around the world. But right now it's just at the forefront. So that's why we're spending so much time thinking about it. And I'll do my best to share what's going on here in Tokyo. And we'll catch up next week, I guess.
And tune into our Instagram. That's just been put up live. Another link into our show notes. And Shannon will be giving you all the laydown into what's happening moment by moment. Is that too much to say?
No, that works.
Moment by moment.
Moment by moment. Big props to Body Type for providing us with some great music as well. The Australian all-girls band. And we're just grateful to have some good tunes.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening in, everybody. Until next week. And we'll have some more Olympic stuff to dive into, as we'll be much farther into the entire competition of it all.
See you then.
Bye.
That was recording already. That would have been my favorite bit to put in as
timing.
We have a podcast.
I just dropped my mic because I just got finished saying that I'm sitting on the ground this time.
Maybe the Wi-Fi will be better on the ground.